In the morning, they crossed a dry wash, and the kid hiked up it, looking for a tank or a hole, but there was none. He picked out a sink in the wash and fell to digging with a bone, and after he had dug some 2 feet into the sand turned damp and then a little more, and a slow seep of water began to fill into the furrows he dredged with his fingers. He took off his shirt and pushed it down into the sand and watched it darken, and he watched the water rise slowly among the folds of cloth until there was perhaps a cupful, and then he lowered his head into the excavation and drank. Then he sat and watched it fill again. He did this for over an hour. Then he put on the shirt and went back down the wash. Sproul didn't want to take off his shirt. He tried sucking up the water, and he got a mouthful of sand. "Why don't you let me use your shirt?" he said. The kid was squatting in the dry gravel of the wash. "Suck on the own shirt," he said. He took off the shirt. It stuck to the skin, and a yellow pus ran. His arm was swollen to the size of his thigh, and it was garishly discolored, and small worms worked in the open wound. He pushed the shirt down into the hole and leaned and drank. In the afternoon, they came to a crossroads. What else to call it? A faint wagon trace that came from the north and crossed their path and went on to the south. They stood scanning the landscape for some guidance in that emptiness. Sproul sat where the tracks crossed and looked out from the great caves in his skull where his eyes lay. He said that he would not rise. "Yonder's a lake," said the kid. He would not look. It lay shimmering in the distance, its edges rimed with salt. The kid studied it and studied the roads. After a while, he nodded toward the south. "I believe this here is the most traveled." "It's all right," said Sproul. "You go on. You suit yourself." Sproul watched him, set off. After a while, he rose and followed. They had gone perhaps 2 miles when they stopped to rest. Sproul, sitting with his legs out and his hands in his lap, and the kid squatting a little ways from him, blinking and bearded and filthy, in their rags. "Does that sound like thunder to you?" said Sproul. The kid raised his head. "Listen." The kid looked at the sky, pale blue, unmarked save where the sun burned like a white hole. "I can feel it in the ground," said Sproul. "It ain't nothing. Listen." The kid rose and looked about. To the north, a small movement of dust. He watched it. It did not rise, nor did it blow away. It was a carreta, lumbering clumsily over the plain, a small mule to draw it. The driver may have been asleep. When he saw the fugitives in the trace before him, he halted the mule and began to sod it around to go back, and he did get it turned. But by then the kid had seized the raw leather headstall and hauled the animal to a standstill. Sproul came hobbling up. From the rear of the wagon, 2 children peered out. They were so pale with dust, their hair so white, and faces pinched, they looked like little gnomes crouched there. At the sight of the kid before him, the driver shrank back, and the woman next to him set up a high, shrill chittering and began to point from one horizon to the other. But he pulled himself up into the bed of the cart, and Sproul came dragging after, and they lay staring up at the hot canvas tarp while the 2 waifs drew back into the corner and watched black-eyed as wood mice. And the cart turned south again and set off with a rising rumble and clatter. There was a clay jar of water hung by a thong from the bowstay, and the kid took it down and drank from it and gave it to Sproul. Then he took it back and drank the rest. They lay in the floor of the cart among old hides and spills of salt, and after a while they slept. It was dark when they entered the town. The jostle of the cart ceasing was what woke them. The kid raised himself up and looked out. Starlight, in a mud street, the wagon empty. The mule wheezed and stamped in the traces. After a while, the man came from the shadows and led them along a lane into a yard, and he backed the mule until the cart was alongside a wall, and then he unhitched the mule and led it away. He lay back in the tilted cart bed. It was cold in the night, and he lay with his knees drawn up under a piece of hide that smelled of mold and urine. And he slept and woke all night, and all night dogs barked, and in the dawn, cocks called, and he heard horses on the road. In the first gray light, flies began to land on him. They touched his face and woke him, and he brushed them away. After a while, he sat up. They were in a barren mud-walled courtyard, and there was a house made of reeds and clay. Chickens stepped about and clucked and scratched. A small boy came from the house and pulled down his pants and shat in the yard, and rose and went in again. The kid looked at Sproul. He was lying with his face to the wagon boards. He was partly covered with his blanket, and flies were crawling on him. The kid reached to shake him. He was cold and wooden. The flies rose, then they settled back. The kid was standing by the cart pissing when the soldiers rode into the yard. They seized him and tied his hands behind him, and they looked in the cart and talked among themselves, and then they led him out into the street. He was taken to an adobe building and put in an empty room. He sat on the floor while a wild-eyed boy with an old musket watched him. After a while, they came and took him out again. They led him through the narrow mud streets, and he could hear music like a fanfare growing louder. First, children walked with him, and then old folk. And finally, a throng of brown-skinned villagers, all dressed in white cotton like attendants in an institution. The women in dark rebozos, some with their breasts exposed, their faces stained red with almagre smoking small cigars. Their numbers swelled, and the guards with their shouldered fusils frowned and shouted at the jostlers. And they went on along the tall adobe wall of a church and into the plaza. Thank you so much for watching. Truly, the fact that you stayed until the end of this video says something important about you. It shows that you care, that you're hungry, that somewhere deep inside, you believe you're meant for more, and you're ready to take the small steps to get there. The blood meridian isn't just a concept, it's a way of living. It's a quiet power that works in the background, shaping your future through the choices you make every single day. Most people ignore it. They think one small decision doesn't matter, but you're learning the truth, that every small decision matters, more than you can imagine. It's easy to overlook the power of reading just one page a day, walking for 10 minutes, saying no to junk food, putting your phone away, and focusing, saving a single penny. But those tiny steps, the ones that seem so simple, even invisible, they build momentum. And momentum builds results. Greatness doesn't arrive in some grand moment. It's crafted in the quiet, in the routine, in the choices that no one else sees. And if you stick with those small steps, if you keep showing up when no one claps, if you keep believing when progress feels invisible, one day, the results will speak for themselves. So today, I want to leave you with a reminder. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to keep doing the small things, right? Read that book. Say no to that distraction. Take that walk. Be kind to that person. Be patient with yourself. Every one of those actions is a brick, and together, they build the life you're dreaming of. If this video gave you even a little push of inspiration, then don't let it stop here. Like the video, subscribe for more content like this, and share it with someone you care about. Someone who's maybe just one idea away from turning their life around. Your story is still being written, and the pen is in your hand. Thanks again for watching. Keep growing, keep believing, and never forget, your blood meridian begins now.